What happens when we begin to realize that the 200-year experiment we've called the American healthcare system has failed? Tune in to Awakened Wellness with Mylaine Riobe, MD, and join the conversation about how to heal our broken system to reverse our current health crisis. The entire world is looking for answers, and the truth is hidden in plain sight. Learn how spirituality, ancient traditions, and cutting-edge science are merging to create a new paradigm of wellness every Wednesday at 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern Time, with live video shows every first and third Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, when you can call in and ask the questions that matter most to you.
We're live.
Thank you, Rachel. And good afternoon and welcome to Awakened Wellness. I'm your host, Dr. Mylaine Riobe. And today we are going on an eye-opening, mind-expanding adventure into disease prevention and wellness. We are live today and it's September 15th, 2021. And I welcome you to the show. I am the medical director of the Riobe Institute of Integrative Medicine here in Jupiter, Florida. And today we are talking about probably the most controversial of diets that we've spoken about so far, which is the vegetarian and vegan diets. So there are a lot of very strong opinions on both sides of this particular argument, or discussion, I should say. So we're going to look at it today and look at the science behind the diets. And talk about them. So we welcome you to Dream Vision 7 Radio today, and we are live. So what is a vegetarian diet, right? So a vegetarian diet is a diet that excludes fish and meat, but does allow byproducts of the meat. So for example, cheese is okay, milk is okay, and eggs are okay, typically on a vegetarian diet. There are different types of vegetarian diets. There are some vegetarians that also include fish, that's called pescatarian. And then there are also, lacto-ovo-vegetarians who exclude the byproducts of animals. So they exclude eggs, they exclude cheeses, they exclude milk, and even honey, since they come from bees. Vegans are even stricter, and they exclude absolutely all dairy products and anything derived from meat. So they would definitely exclude things like honey, cheeses, milks. And so those are the subcategories, and we're going to talk about them today. The controversy about vegan diets is the difficulty in obtaining the nutrients that people need. So in the vegan diet, because of the exclusion of animal products, vegans can sometimes become nutritionally depleted. Now, we know based on our previous discussions on our podcast that just about anyone can become nutritionally depleted today because the value of our food is just not there. So even, carnivores get nutritionally depleted, vegetarians are nutritionally depleted. So nutritional depletion is kind of ubiquitous in society. So the vegan and vegetarian diets are kind of singled out as diets that are known to have, nutritional gaps in them. Most notably, the nutrients you would get from eating animal products, the most notorious of which is, B12. Of course, we know that we can get B12 from vegetables as well. Vitamin D is another one that's touted to be deficient in the vegan vegetarian diet. Although we know that we get vitamin D directly from the sun outside of actual nutritional sources. And so the main thing also is protein deficiency. So it can be very difficult on a vegetarian and particularly on a vegan diet to get sufficient protein. So there are basically 9 essential amino acids that you have to get from your diet. Your body cannot make them. So there are 20 different amino acids that are your body's protein building blocks. And as we've discussed in previous podcasts, most of the structure of your body is made of protein and fat. And if you want to keep the structure of your body sound, including your brain, your muscles, your bones, your teeth, your skin, your organs on the inside, if you want to keep your hormones in balance, if you want to, keep your detoxification going in normal fashion, you're going to need these 20 amino acids. 9 of them you have to get from your diet. They are not automatically made in the human body. And I never commit these to memory, so I'm just going to read them off. So the 9 essential amino acids are histidine, isoleucine, leucine, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, and valine. So those are the 9 that you cannot get from your diet. I'm sorry, that your body cannot make and you must get from your diet. That's what I meant to say. So there's always a discussion of, well, how do I know I'm getting enough protein if I'm a vegan? And so there are certain food combinations that are helpful and are considered to be quote unquote complete proteins. So there's no real protein that's going to have all 20 essential amino acids in it. So that's another reason that I always say it's so important to vary the diet. You don't want to eat the same things over and over, because if those things are missing certain amino acids or vitamins or minerals, you will become depleted if you're eating that food all the time. And so if you're vegan, so in other words, you have excluded all animal products and byproducts, no cheese, no milk, no honey, no, which one am I missing here? No yogurt, no eggs, then these are some things you can add to your diet to make sure that you're getting a more complete diet. So buckwheat is one, which is a cousin to rhubarb. So soba noodles are an example of buckwheat. Hummus with pita is actually considered a complete protein. It has a pretty good amino acid profile. Soy in the form of edamame, tempeh, or tofu is also considered a semi-complete protein. Pumpkin seeds, roasted and salted, you can make them. Chia seeds are considered a complete protein. Peanut butter with toast. And I would recommend maybe you have Ezekiel bread as your toast, because Ezekiel bread is also a semi-complete protein. Hemp is another source of really good complete protein. And a staple in the Caribbean community, rice and beans, is a complete protein. And quinoa and spirulina, if it's added to oats, grains, or nuts, is considered a complete protein. So I think we may have had a question come in. Question, I've heard you talk about very different diets. Do you have a preference or recommend one? I have a preference for myself, but that isn't necessarily the preference for everyone else. It really does depend on each person. So whenever anyone asks me a question, my answer always starts with it depends. It depends on the person. And in Chinese medicine, we can customize someone's nutrition by looking at their patterns. In other words, looking at what's in balance or out of balance in the body, and that would dictate the foods that that person would eat to bring them back into balance. Personally, I don't highly recommend a vegan or vegetarian diet for extended periods of time, particularly in women. And we'll go into why that is during this podcast. We are just genetically wired differently than men. And because of the stressful late 20th, early 21st century stress that we have, we are impacted by stress differently than men. And so a vegan vegetarian diet is a little bit more hazardous in women than it is in men if done too long. And again, in Chinese medicine, there's a premise that no restrictive diet is good for extended periods of time. You always want to level out your diet eventually. So for me, I eat protein, I eat animal-based proteins, in addition to, a ton of vegetables. I don't eat a lot of fruits, just because I like to lift weights and I do like bodybuilding. So I don't want to accumulate a lot of fat stores over my muscles. So I don't eat a lot of fruit for that reason. That doesn't mean fruits aren't good for you. Just if you want to maintain muscle tone, fruits tend to be digested a little differently than vegetables. So they have a certain look on the body that's different. But we'll go into it a little more detail, but I don't have a preference that I would say, this is the best diet. I think everything in moderation is important. I think nature built into itself guideposts for us to know what to eat, right? Fruits and vegetables don't run away from you when you try and get them. So they are, what we're supposed to eat the most of. Animals will run away, right? Some animals are harder to catch than others, right? Fish might be a little easier to catch than buffalo, right? So nature kind of gives us some signposts as to, how we're supposed to eat things and how much of things we're supposed to eat. So probably having more fish than, gamey meats is probably healthier for most people. But if we see that people are very cold in Chinese medicine and blood deficient, we would recommend that they eat gamey red meat for a while just to warm themselves up. So there's no one preference. And the best thing really is to be under the guidance of a doctor of Oriental medicine to know exactly what diet would suit you. And even then it will change, it's never the same. So thank you for that question. What's the best diet for losing weight? We talked about a few, right? So the keto diet has been touted for weight loss. A vegan vegetarian diet will also assist with weight loss. And an alkaline diet would help with weight loss. And then, again, you want to be careful. You don't want to lose muscle mass. So when you're trying to lose weight, probably the keto diet would be the safest because it does include a good bit of protein. So it's less likely that you will lose muscle mass. And on a keto diet, you're not as likely to be as tired. So you could probably still work out, go to the gym, and maintain your muscle mass. And that would be the most effective way to lose weight, is to protect your muscles so that you're losing mostly fat and inflammation. So the vegan vegetarian diet is very anti-inflammatory. That is one distinct advantage that it definitely has. But just like every other restrictive diet, there comes a point where you can overdo it. So, you don't want to be on an anti-inflammatory diet if you don't have inflammation, because then it's going to deplete you. And that's the issue that we see sometimes with the vegan vegetarian diet. So thank you for that question. Let's see here. My sister is a vegan and she seems like she's not as healthy and happy as she once was. Plus holidays are coming up and mom and her always fight over the dinner. Should I speak up and tell her I'm worried? Well, being authentic is always important. So if you can express your concerns in a compassionate way, then yes, of course. But there's more to it than just that. Sometimes people go on vegan diets for different reasons. And so it may not simply be because she's on a vegan diet that she doesn't look as healthy. There may be other factors, stress and other things. But if we look at the vegan vegetarian diet, we see studies that show that it does confer a cardiovascular benefit. Vegans and vegetarians are less likely to have heart attacks than people that eat excessive amounts of meat. So when you compare the vegan or even the vegetarian diet to the average American diet, which again is not healthy, there's a clear advantage to the vegan vegetarian diet in that it reduces the risk of cardiovascular events. So you're less likely to have a heart attack. You're also less likely to get cancer if you compare a vegan vegetarian diet to the typical American diet. Now, we all know the typical American diet is not really food. So you're comparing actual food to not food. And so it's not hard to surmise what the outcome of a study like that will be. But what we want to look at is it healthy long-term? That's always my concern is it healthy long-term? There's a point at which restricting yourself too much becomes detrimental. So the other side of the vegan vegetarian coin, in particular with veganism, is there is an increased risk of osteoporosis. Brain health may not be as preserved on a vegan diet if it's extended for too long. The brain is a very fatty organ, and we can go to science, we can go to archaeology, and now even genetics. There's strong scientific evidence that eating animals is what allowed the human brain to evolve more because of the types of fats that are in the brain. So vegan vegetarian diets are considered not to have what we would call brain nutrients as much as other diets. And so I was doing research before the podcast, and I looked up, do vegans have an increased risk of Alzheimer's dementia, or do they have an increased risk of dementia? And I found an article that seemed to suggest that vegetarians have less of a risk of Alzheimer's. And so I was curious because it didn't make sense based on the genetics information and the archaeology information. And so I clicked on the article to read it. And when I read the details of the article, it wasn't a vegetarian diet that they had studied at all. It was a Mediterranean diet. And a Mediterranean diet is not a vegetarian or a vegan diet. But they claimed that because a Mediterranean diet is mostly vegetables, that vegetarianism would protect the brain. And that's going a bit too far. You can't conclude that from this study. You can conclude that a Mediterranean diet will reduce your risk of Alzheimer's dementia, but you can't make the assumption that because a Mediterranean diet does that, then a vegetarian diet will do the same, because a Mediterranean diet includes meat and animal products, whereas a vegetarian diet does not. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, and you have to really drill into the details to find out. A Mediterranean diet includes meat. They eat meat, they eat chicken, they eat fish, and they eat a ton of vegetables, and they eat really good fats, olive oil in particular. And so that's really good for the brain. But vegetarianism does not include those foods. And so the jury's out as to whether veganism and vegetarianism would increase the risk of dementia, but it seems logical that it might. Does increase the risk of osteoporosis for obvious reasons, right? We're not getting enough protein on that diet long term, particularly in women. And because women are more at risk for osteoporosis to begin with, the vegan vegetarian diet might accelerate that process. So thank you for that question. I don't want to eat my animal friends, so I'm vegan all the way. Okay, that's valid, right? So it turns out if we go back and we ask ourselves, and this was something that I asked myself, I said, are we supposed to eat meat, or are we not supposed to eat meat as human beings? And we have to kind of put aside our dogma and our beliefs and be willing to look at the science, right? And ask, like, is there evidence? to show us whether or not we're supposed to be eating animals, right? And so, again, you'll find a lot of dogma on one side or the other. So for the people that want to prove that, yes, we're supposed to eat meat, there's plenty of evidence that, yes, we are supposed to eat meat. So if you nitpick that evidence, you could support your argument that we're supposed to eat meat. If you want the argument to be, no, we're supposed to be vegetarians and vegans, you will also find evidence of that. There's archaeological and genetic evidence that, yes, we're supposed to eat vegetables. The reason there's evidence for both is because we're supposed to eat both. So we are neither carnivores nor herbivores, right? Carnivore is meat eating and herbivore is vegetable eating or fruit eating. We are both. And so it turns out that we are what's called omnivore. Omnivore is we'll eat anything that, that doesn't run away from us when we try and kill it. And that's what the archaeological evidence is showing. So the Stone Age man, millions of years ago, had tools to kill animals. We have cave carvings of humans hunting animals. So we are definitely hunter-gatherers. And then as we began we would also, forage on fruits and vegetables as hunter-gatherers. So the archaeological and the genetic evidence. So there is evidence that we have genes specifically to digest fat that we would find in animal products. So we are designed physiologically to eat both meat, animal products, and vegetables and fruits and seeds and nuts. So if we look at our teeth are designed for meat and vegetables, right? Nuts and seeds. So we have the distinct advantage of being able to eat just about anything. And historically, we have eaten just about anything in the past. So it turns out that whether or not we eat animal products is simply a matter of choice. Again, we are human, so we do have, that frontal lobe that we can use to make decisions. So we can choose to say, I don't want to harm animals, and therefore I choose not to eat meat, and that would be absolutely valid. The data is a little bit obscure as to whether that would be quote unquote better for the environment or not. We don't really know that. That's an assumption we're making. But the argument that, I don't want to harm animals, I don't want to farm animals. And, it's very clear that we have been beyond abusive to animals. It's very clear that our practices in regards to how we have treated animals that we have used for food has been less than, has been subhuman, really, kind of beneath us, so to speak. And so the argument for that is quite valid, right? So it's a matter of choice. That's really the bottom line. But we are genetically designed to eat animal products. Now, does that mean that we're not evolving into vegetarians, right? So again, it's a matter of choice. It could be 2 million years ago, we ate meat and vegetables, but now we're choosing a different path. And so that's also valid. So it's time for our first commercial break. So thank you for all the awesome questions. And as always, it's great to be here having this discussion. We're live right here on Dream Vision 7 Radio, and we'll be right back after this commercial break.
What happens when we begin to realize that the 200-year experiment we've called the American healthcare system has failed? Learn how spirituality, ancient traditions, and cutting-edge science are merging to create a new paradigm of wellness on Awakened Wellness with Mylaine Riobe, MD. Tune in every Wednesday at 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern Time with live video shows every first and third Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, when you can call in and ask Dr. Mylaine the questions that matter most to you. Dr. Mylaine is the medical director of the Riobe Institute of Integrative Medicine in Jupiter, Florida. For more information, visit RIOBE-integrativemedicine.com. Dream Vision 7 Radio Network invites you in for this dynamic, forward-thinking show.
Join Dr. Bernie Siegel on Mind Health Matters every Thursday and Friday, 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern Time on syndicated Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. Bernie will draw from his inspirational personal journey, offering us special nuggets of his sacred wisdom weaved through his delightful stories. Listen in as Bernie reminds us to be fully engaged in life.
Ever wonder what it's like to have your own radio show? Well, wonder no longer, because you can dip into the radio airwaves by being host for the day on syndicated Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. It's a fabulous way to get your radio feet wet. It's an opportunity to market your business, modality, or book. Have a guest, mention a sponsor, and take callers. Or you may want to facilitate a lesson by going solo. It's up to you. Listeners can be online, mobile, in cars with Bluetooth, or listen through Amazon's Echo by asking, Alexa, play Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. For more details, go to dreamvision7radio.com and click on Host for the Day.
Looking for a fun and relaxing getaway? Omega Rest and Rejuvenation Retreats are a great way to unwind and renew your spirit. Sit and read in the garden, explore the woodland trails, or try a daily yoga or meditation class. You can stretch your body, quiet your mind, and do as much or as little as you choose. Located in Rhinebeck, New York, just 90 miles north of New York City, Omega's natural environment and quiet pace allow for extraordinary experiences to unfold. Learn more at eomega.org.
Delight your kids with an enchanting journey by reading the Paper Doll Kids children's book by Deborah Beauvais and Janine Sullivan. There's even a catchy tune, Kids for Love Song, produced by Bob Sherwood and sung by kids just like yours. The story weaves around 7 paper dolls flying around the world doing good deeds as they bring important attention to our endangered animal friends. There's even a magical ring with a universal message. Kids become interested in service projects, action through compassion, and planting seeds that nurture positive change. The Paper Doll Kids and Kids for Love Song are a production of the Kids for Love Project. Get the book now on Amazon Kindle and the song on CD Baby or iTunes.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
And we're back.
Thank you, Rachel. Welcome back to Awakened Wellness. I'm your host, Dr. Mylaine Riobe, and we're live here on Dream Vision 7 Radio. And our number is area code 646-558-8656. And our meeting ID is 883-695-3587. And as always, just hit *9 to raise your hand with any comments, questions. They've been wonderful so far, so I'm looking forward to more. So we have some more questions here. As I'm getting older, I seem to be doing less work. My body aches more. I'm also finding my tummy is more sensitive to certain foods. Is this age-related, or could I have something wrong? Food sensitivities, again, it depends, right? It depends on the type of food you're eating. So if you're eating a lot of foods with pesticides, those will eventually cause sensitivity. Also, if you're eating the same foods over and over again, your body kind of runs out of gas in having to digest that same food over and over. So when I do food sensitivity studies for my clients, they often make the comment that, oh, I'm sensitive to everything I eat all the time. And yes, you will become sensitive to things you eat all the time. So you have to vary them. The other issue is the stomach likes to be very warm to properly digest. So when people are having sensitivity issues, it's usually important for them to start avoiding a lot of raw and cold, uncooked frozen foods, and to have things that are very warm and cooked. So even your vegetables, they can still be crunchy, but just not raw. You'll want to roast them, or cook them in some way. Of course, not overcooking them so they don't lose their nutritional value. But if you're having sensitivity, you want to make sure you check into those things. And then also you'd want to rule out an infection in the small intestine. So sometimes food sensitivity or inflammation is caused by infections. So you'd want to get that checked out by an integrative medical doctor. Unfortunately, regular gastroenterologists or primary care physicians don't typically test for small bowel infections, which is the most likely thing. So an integrative medical doctor would be your best resource there. So thank you for that question. That was great. Oh my God, I didn't know how important it was to vary my diet. Thanks, doctor. You're welcome. Yeah, absolutely. Everything has to vary, and it makes sense, right? If you're eating the same thing over and over again, every food doesn't have the same nutrition. Every food doesn't have all the vitamins you need and all the proteins and all the fats you need, right? In fact, there's almost no food that has everything you need. And so you have to vary your food so that if you didn't have enough, protein yesterday or enough B12 yesterday, you have a different food today that's more likely to have more protein in the B12 that you missed the day before. That way your body isn't depleted for extended periods of time. And that's the best way to maintain health. So I hope that helps. Let's see if we have anything more. My mom is not eating much. She says she's not hungry. Should I worry? Depends on her age, of course, and her health status. So without knowing a lot about your mom, it's very difficult for me to say. Low appetite in Chinese medicine is a sign of what they would call spleen qi deficiency, particularly if it's associated with fatigue or loose stools. And that's a sign of kind of a weak metabolism, weak digestion. And again, the best thing to do is to be under the care of a board-certified integrative medical doctor for that, or a doctor of Oriental medicine, or perhaps see a registered dietitian. You can count how many calories she's eating, look at how much protein and fat and carbs she's eating, and that would help you to know if she needs to add anything to her diet or if she needs to be evaluated further. So I hope that answers that question, but it's hard to answer without more detail. So when we go back and we look at the scientific evidence, right, that says that we are omnivores, we eat everything. The question is why, right? And if we look at it, it conferred advantages to us back then. So it turns out that when you add meat to the diet, you can wean your young faster. And so that puts less of an evolutionary strain on a species, right? To be able to wean their young faster means they can have more babies, right? And that's a survival advantage. That way, you wean the baby off of, breast milk faster. And then that baby is more self-sufficient. That baby can be better nourished. And then you can turn around and have another baby, right? And so there's a distinct evolutionary advantage to that. And then the second thing was just survival period, right? When it didn't rain and you didn't have as much, vegetable crops and such, you could hunt animals, right? And vice versa. And so being able to eat everything confers a distinct evolutionary advantage, especially, 2 million years ago, right? 85,000 to 40,000 years ago, we started eating more vegetables. So we started to develop the ability to have access to more vegetables and fruits than we had before. And if we fast forward to today, we don't have a lot of predators anymore. Our immediate safety is not under immediate threat all the time anymore. We have the ability to control water. We have, the ability to control weather. And so what we needed 2 million years ago may not be what we need anymore, right? So is it possible to live on a vegetarian or vegan diet? The answer is absolutely you can. What we don't know is if the body will survive that in terms of maintaining its proper structure. So there's definitely some scientific evidence to show that bone mass is lost through a vegan, particularly a vegan diet. Muscle mass is very difficult to maintain. And so we have to then surmise, well, how about brain mass? Because the structure of the brain depends on animal products for its subsistence. And there is evidence to show that the human brain did evolve into what it is today based on consumption of animal products. And so, and not the sole consumption. I want to make sure I'm clear. It's not like we only ate meat. We ate a ton of vegetables and some meat. And again, meat's not easy to catch, right? Today, we just go to the grocery store and we can eat buckets of meat if we want to, which is not good, right? But back then, we didn't eat meat often, right? It wasn't that often you could catch things. And so we were probably eating closer to a paleo-Mediterranean diet back then. Today, all bets are off. We just go to the grocery store and we can buy, pounds and pounds of steaks. Now, is that good? Probably not, right? So we want to really think about what nature intended, right? If we had to go hunt for our own meat, we wouldn't eat much meat, right? That doesn't mean we wouldn't eat meat at all. It just means we wouldn't eat a lot of it. And so it's probably in our best interest not to eat a lot of meat, right? Because that's how nature built it in. And so that's what I always say. Now, if someone has high acidity, so if they come in and they get evaluated and we see that they have a lot of very toxic acidity in their bodies, we will recommend that they do not eat any meat, at least until such time as the toxic acidity has been resolved. And you can tell by looking at the tongue. So they'll have certain symptoms that will create those patterns. And then when you look at their tongue and feel their pulses, they will have usually a very red tongue. Sometimes it's really dark red. It could be very dry with not much of a coating on it. Could have little spots of purple and look kind of dim. And so that's toxic acidity. And so you don't want those people eating meat. You don't want those people eating any gamey meats in particular. And you would put them kind of on an alkaline vegetarian diet for some time until the acidity went away. And then you would level them out, right? You would never want them to go back on the diet that created all that acidity. But you would also not want them continuing on a vegan diet because, at some point, they're going to go over the other side and the advantages that they're obtaining from the vegan diet will kind of backfire. There is some scientific data to suggest that if vegans become, or vegetarians, or anyone really, becomes too nutritionally depleted, they will get sick. So that we know. But that applies to anyone, right? You could be an omnivore and still be nutritionally depleted and still get sick, just like you can be a vegan and be nutritionally depleted and still get sick. And so what I recommend to people who are vegans and vegetarians is just make sure that you're being tested. Make sure that you know what your nutritional needs are. Make sure you know what the gaps in your diet are and fill them with supplements. If you need to, or add things to your diet, add some of the complete proteins we talked about earlier to your diet to make it, more complete so that you have fewer nutritional deficiencies. So whichever diet you choose, the bottom line is always the same. The bottom line is to make sure you get tested for nutrition deficiencies and make sure you fill those gaps in, either by changing your diet to include more of the foods that would give you what you're missing. So that's really ultimately the bottom line. It is really a matter of choice. Now, some clients come into the office and they're very cold, they have a very low metabolism, and they're, quote unquote, too alkaline. And you can tell that because their tongue is pale, they have a thick white coating, and they have other symptoms and signs. But for them, you do not want them on a vegan diet because they're already on the other side of that. The vegan diet is affecting them adversely. So you need to warm those people up. Now, that doesn't mean they have to suddenly start eating meat, but they might have to stop eating raw food in order to warm themselves up. They might have to add some spices to their diet to warm them up. So too much of a good thing can be just as inflammatory as too little of a good thing. So in Chinese medicine, it's always about balance ultimately. And the bottom line is, as long as you are not nutritionally depleted, you will be healthy, right? And that's really the bottom line. Whether you choose to be a vegan, an omnivore, a vegetarian, whether you do the paleo diet, whether you do the keto diet, the bottom line is make sure that you're not nutritionally depleted. I think we're due for our next commercial break. So as always, thank you for listening. And on the other side of this commercial break, we'll talk about women in particular as vegans and some of the pitfalls that we need to be aware of so that we can have this diet in a healthy way or participate in this diet in a healthier way. So we'll be right back. Thanks for listening.
What happens when we begin to realize that the 200-year experiment we've called the American healthcare system has failed? Learn how spirituality, ancient traditions, and cutting-edge science are merging to create a new paradigm of wellness on Awakened Wellness with Mylaine Riobe, MD. Tune in every Wednesday at 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern Time with live video shows every first and third Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern when you can call in and ask Dr. Mylaine the questions that matter most to you. Dr. Mylaine is the medical director of the Riobe Institute of Integrative Medicine in Jupiter, Florida. For more information, visit RIOBE-integrativemedicine.com. Dream Vision 7 Radio Network invites you in for this dynamic, forward-thinking show.
EDCIA is a U.S. nonprofit dedicated to the dream of ending childhood malnutrition for millions of children around the world through the manufacture of Plumpy Nut and other nutrient-rich, peanut-based, ready-to-use foods. EDCIA has already delivered life and hope to nearly 1 million children in over 26 developing countries. To find out how you can join EDCIA's dream of ending childhood malnutrition, please visit edciaglobal.org.
What if dreams can diagnose your life? What if we can meet the love of our life in dreams? Join host Kat O'Keefe Canavas, the #1 internationally best-selling author of Dreams That Can Save Your Life, written with Duke University medical doctor Larry Burke. Dreaming Healing is where we'll explore dreams, research, and interpret dreams from you, the caller. Dreaming Healing shows can be heard every Tuesday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern, with live shows on the first and third evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific Time on syndicated Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. Come live your dreams out loud with Kat.
Are you searching for a way to help create global change? Dream Vision 7 Radio Network's vision is to have an eclectic group of radio hosts dedicated to educating, enlightening, and helping humankind with positive messages and tools that enhance lives using different modalities and programs. If you would like to join our team and help illuminate the universe, call Deborah at 508-226-1723 or Deborah at dreamvision7radio.com. This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
We're back.
Thank you, Rachel. Welcome back to Awakened Wellness. I'm your host, Dr. Mylaine Riobe, and today we're talking about the vegan and vegetarian diets. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about women in particular. So in Chinese medicine, there's a premise that says women are of blood and men are of qi. And blood in Chinese medicine is, obviously we know blood as the thing that courses through our veins, that carries our nutrients and oxygen all throughout the body. It's a little bit more than that in Chinese medicine. There's also an energy to blood. And when we look at women's evolutionary roles as nurturers, we can see how blood dependent we actually are. And so we menstruate. That's our primary, blood consuming function as a woman is menstruation. So every month we lose blood. When we get pregnant, we consume a lot of blood. We feed an entire other human being and sometimes two other human beings with our blood. And so that consumes blood, even though we do see a 50% increase in blood production in women when they're pregnant. It still consumes a lot of blood. And then, of course, childbirth consumes more blood. And then breastfeeding is made of blood. And so that consumes more blood. So as women, we are very blood dependent. Men are what's called qi dependent. So they're more energy dependent. That doesn't mean men don't use their blood. They do, but they don't menstruate, they don't get pregnant, they don't breastfeed. And so there's not extra stuff to consume their blood like there is with women. So when we look at blood, plants don't have blood, right? Animals have blood. So when we need to replace blood, when we're blood deficient, it's a lot harder to replace blood with things that don't contain blood than it is to replace blood with things that do contain blood, right? And so that's the only thing. Women tend to be blood deficient, not just because of what I mentioned earlier, but also because of stress. The stress of the last century or more is unprecedented. We've never seen this type of chronic stress before that we're aware of. And stress consumes blood, right? And that makes sense. When you're under a lot of stress, you're burning more energy. And when you're burning more energy, you're going to consume more blood. That's just how it is. And so when we see women today, they are blood deficient due to their natural roles as nurturers, but they are also blood deficient due to stress. And so that's why stress impacts women differently than it does men. We see that 78% of what we would describe as autoimmune disorders occur in women. That's almost 80%. So 8 out of every 10 autoimmune disorders occur in women and not men. And the reason for that is because of blood deficiency and women's propensity to be blood deficient. We also see twice as much depression in women as we do in men for the same reason. So the reason I'm not a big fan of veganism and vegetarianism is because of what Chinese medicine has to say about people who are blood deficient need to eat blood. That doesn't mean you over consume blood, right? We're notorious for over consuming blood. We don't just have 4 ounces of steak, we have 2 pounds of steak. And that, again, that's not good. But to have some meat occasionally will prevent that level of blood deficiency from occurring. And so, again, everyone is different and it depends. But that is the reason why women in particular are not as well suited for veganism and vegetarianism. So that's what I have on that. And I think we had a couple more questions, so let me look. I yo-yo on diets all the time. When I fall off the wagon, I fall hard. Like go for a McDonald's burger and fries, okay? Then I feel sick. Is it just guilt that makes me feel bad, or is hamburgers really the cause? Typically when people yo-yo, it's because they're restricting themselves too much. And they're probably nutritionally depleted. So most Americans are nutritionally depleted despite what the CDC says, right? We've talked about that in previous podcasts. The CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, claims that only 10% of the US population has nutrition deficiencies. That's just not true. And again, we talked about why they came up to that conclusion. They concluded that based on blood work. And so if you're using blood work to test your vitamins, then you will be falsely led to believe that you don't have a lot of nutrition deficiencies. You have to look inside the cells for nutrient deficiencies. And when you do that, you will find that the vast majority of Americans are nutritionally depleted. And so when you go on a diet and you restrict yourself even more by reducing your calories, you're getting even fewer vitamins and minerals than you were before. Your body is going to rebel against you at some point, right? And because it needs to survive, right? It's not going to tolerate being that depleted for that long, and you're going to start getting cravings that you cannot outwill, and you're going to end up at McDonald's, right? So the best thing to do is to get your vitamin deficiencies corrected first. And sometimes just doing that alone causes the weight loss you're looking for, and you don't really need to do anything else. And then if you still need to lose more weight, then at least you're being properly supported through the diet. You will have fewer cravings. The other thing is you don't need to calorie restrict yourself that much to lose weight. You just have to be strategic about it. So if you're going to be more active, you eat a little bit more before that activity. If you're just going to be hanging out at your desk or laying on the couch, you eat less. That doesn't mean you don't eat. It just means you might not have carbs included in your meal. You may only have protein, and vegetables for that meal. So there's a whole strategy to weight loss that you want to employ so you don't get cravings. One is to get properly tested for nutrient deficiencies, and to be taking the right supplements, and to have your food adjusted so that you're getting the vitamins that you're deficient in. And then if you need to go on a diet after that, then you go on a diet. And don't restrict yourself too much. So when people are trying to lose weight, I usually recommend they eat every 3 hours, and they think I'm crazy when I say that. But that actually gets your metabolism going faster. Now, you don't eat a bunch of carbs and fruits every 3 hours, but you're very strategic. You might have just a protein shake with some vegetables or something like that. You might have, organic poultry with some vegetables 3 hours later, something of that nature every 3 hours. So that way you're never hungry and you lose weight at the same time. So I hope that answers that question. There has been talk lately about gut bacteria and weight control. Have you heard about this? Yes. So the microbiome, we talk about the microbiome on our podcast. So your gut is riddled with bugs, and we are designed to live surrounded by bugs. So there's a balance in our environment where there are more bugs in our world than there are humans. Even our own cells are outnumbered by bugs in our own bodies. So there's at least 100 trillion bacteria on our skin surfaces, on our mucous membranes, inside of our gastrointestinal systems that are there for a reason. And they are actually what make us human. We wouldn't be human without them. So we need them just as much as they need us. And I think the microbiome will be considered an organ at some point, just like the heart, just like the liver. As we begin to understand more about the microbiome, I think we'll recognize it as a human organ. But it is extremely important. And that's why I'm very, very cautious about using antibiotics in my clients, pesticides, all those things kill the good bacteria in the body. It's really hard to get those bacteria back when you lose them because we get them through the birth canal from our mothers. So as we're being born and pass through the birth canal, we get colonized with the microbiome or the good bacteria that end up defending and protecting us. So one of their jobs is to regulate our metabolism and regulate inflammation. So a lot of weight gain is actually inflammatory weight gain. It's not just fat. With the fat comes the inflammation. So getting your microbiome in better balance through the use of prebiotics, sometimes probiotics, but be very careful. There's controversy about probiotics. You can be tested. You can have your microbiome actually tested so you can see their counts and you can see if they're functioning properly. So if you already have normal good bacteria, or sometimes you have too many good bacteria, we call that overgrowth, and that's usually in the presence of infection. You don't want to take probiotics under those circumstances because you're going to defeat the purpose. So you only want to take probiotics if your good bacterial counts are too low. And you'd want to be tested for that first. And again, that's under the care of an integrative medical doctor. So thank you. That's a great question. Let's see. I read that I should eat fruits and vegetables during season only. So should I avoid foreign shipped produce? That's a tough question. I say that a lot, right? In season for what, right? So we're all genetically from somewhere, in my case, I'm genetically from like 20 different places, right? And so in season where is the question. So that's a tough one. Are we supposed to eat for where we're from? Are we supposed to eat for where we are? We don't know the answer to that question. So I don't know if I would necessarily drive myself crazy trying to figure that out, right? I did my genetics recently. I'm from like 20 different places and they're very far apart from each other. So the question of eating in seasons, like season for what? Germany, Africa, Asia, in season for what? And so I don't know if that's very valid, to be honest. I would just stick with very organic. That's probably the number one thing, is avoid pesticides at all costs, if possible. That's really hard to do because if you live in a place where the organic supply is restricted, then that creates a problem as well, because then you can't vary your diet as much. So that's a loaded question. I'm not sure I agree with the premise of eating in season because, again, season for where? I think as more and more of us get tested, we'll find out we're from so many different places. It's hard to pinpoint, what to do. So I think if you vary your diet, you try and avoid pesticides as much as possible. Get tested so that you know if you have vitamin and mineral deficiencies and make up for that in some way. So if you can't find clean food to make up for the vitamin deficiencies, and you take supplements, right? Supplements are not the most ideal way, but they are very useful and they're very helpful if you have vitamin deficiencies, and also make sure your supplements are safe as well. I think that's all the time we have. Excellent questions. It's always a pleasure to be here with you on Dream Vision 7 Radio. Thanks for listening to Awakened Wellness. I'm your host, Dr. Mylaine Riobe, and until next time, many blessings. Thank you.
Join us next time on Awakened Wellness with Mylaine Riobe, MD, to learn how spirituality, ancient traditions, and cutting-edge science are merging to create a new paradigm of wellness. Awakened Wellness airs every Wednesday at 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern Time, with live video shows every first and third Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern of each month. Meanwhile, you can join our Facebook page at facebook.com/awakenedwellness and let us know know what you'd like to discuss on future episodes. Dr. Mylaine is the medical director of the Riobe Institute of Integrative Medicine in Jupiter, Florida. For more information, visit riobeintegrativemedicine.com. This show is part of the Dream Vision 7 radio network.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.